He is the founder and co-owner of Rustic Canyon family of restaurants. He attributes his success in the restaurant business to surrounding himself with talented people who share his love of hospitality, the best local ingredients, and family business mentality. I'm going to actually let him tell you more about him because I'm just really intrigued and excited to share his journey. It's going to give you some amazing insights to the industry and how to be successful. So take it away, Josh.
Cool. Thank you so much, Kathleen. I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to be talking to everybody here, sharing our story, my wife and I. She's running around with the kids right now, who you might hear in the background at some point. So I apologize if there's loud screams or cries or any of those things, but just part of the day. Yeah, my name is Josh. I started first restaurant called Rustic Canyon, and we're now called the Rustic Canyon family of restaurants. It is a restaurant group that is built around using really good farmers market ingredients, about craftsmanship, about making things from scratch, whether it's breads or pastas or just really kind of going that extra stretch to make everything as honest and delicious as possible. And then about what I always say is taking our work really seriously, but not taking ourselves too seriously. Because I think that one of the things that happens with food and wine and all of that is that sometimes people take themselves too seriously. And while it's important to really care and to understand, all the details of who's growing what for you and what goes into making food, it's still food at the end of the day. It's meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be shared. And so we try to make our food really approachable and not pretentious in any way. So basically I am the CEO and founder of a group of restaurants. We have 9 different restaurants in our group. They're all different intentionally. They're all in Santa Monica intentionally, mostly because I don't like to, well, at least when I was starting up, I didn't want to have to be on the freeway driving all across town all the time. So I wanted to be able to be close, and I wanted all the restaurants to be able to support each other. And I was born and raised in Santa Monica. And so I really wanted to bring a certain kind of food to the area. It is definitely a labor of love. A little bit about my story. I was an English major in college. I had never worked a day in a restaurant before. I did not think I was going to open restaurants. And I went through my 20s working in magazines and living in New York and San Francisco and the Bay Area and Oakland. And I loved restaurants. I grew up, I loved food. I loved cooking. I loved eating in restaurants. I loved shopping at farmers markets. And kind of went through my 20s feeling a little bit confused, as people can do sometimes in their 20s, and not really knowing what I wanted to do and not really being very happy. And I moved back to LA, and I was out at a bar one day with a bunch of friends, and I was really unhappy because I've never been a bar person personally. And I just don't like being up that late, and I don't like drinking that much. And I just kind of sat off in the corner, and I was like, well, what do I want to be doing right now? And all I could think of is I wanted to go to bed. I wanted to wake up early. I wanted to go to the farmer's market. I wanted to cook breakfast for all my friends. And I was not a trained chef, but I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I went home, I looked at my books, I wrote my menu, and I woke up the next morning and I made breakfast for my friends, and I was really happy. It just felt good. I loved finding the flowers and figuring out what I was going to serve people to drink and just bringing people around the table. And having lived in New York and lived in San Francisco and Berkeley and the East Bay, places that had more of a food culture, I felt like, than LA at the time, or at least in Santa Monica. There was a certain kind of restaurant that we didn't have in Santa Monica. We had even though we had the best, or one of the best, farmers markets in the country, we had super high-end restaurants that were special occasion places that shopped from the farmers market. And then we had a bunch of restaurants that didn't really use high quality ingredients, and it wasn't really the attention to detail when it came to craftsmanship. But I had seen restaurants like that living in New York and living in the Bay Area that you could go in jeans and a t-shirt a couple times a week. And even if you were just getting a burger or you were getting like a simple plate of pasta, it was done, everything was done by scratch, and they were making their own buns and they were making their own pastas. And you could just tell there was an extra layer of detail and craftsmanship that went into it. And so I wanted to open a place like that. And so after this breakfast where I decided, I think I found something that made me happy, I was like, well, I gotta figure this out. So I spent the next 5 or 6 years just working my way up through a restaurant group in Santa Monica. And I started at the front as a host, and I loved it. And everyone else there was pretty unhappy and miserable because it was kind of a rough work environment. But I really enjoyed it. And I just wanted to learn, and I just took every opportunity I could to learn. I asked to be in every meeting. I tried to move and work every position in the restaurant. I tried to get internships on the side. I took wine courses. I took basically anything that I could do in order to, learn, because I think that's what happens when you find something you love. You just want to learn every single thing about it. The other thing I started doing is I wanted to figure out what kind of restaurant I wanted to have. And I had moved back into Santa Monica to the house that I grew up in, and my parents had moved up to the Bay Area for a little while. My dad had taken a job up there. And so I had this great kitchen, and I started cooking these this kind of pre-pop-up restaurant phase. I started cooking these dinners, and they were totally crazy. Dinner was always an hour and a half late, and it was a mess. And I charged $25 a person, and it probably cost me $60 a person by the time I made everything 5 or 6 times and trying to figure it out and paying retail prices for everything. But I started to get this feel for what I wanted, which was this feeling of celebration, and this feeling of, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you start with really good ingredients and you really, really try, and you just have fun, and if you love it, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can kind of figure out the details along the way. So at one of those dinners, I'd never started a business. So I'd never taken any business courses. And a guy that I casually knew came to one of the dinners. At the end, he said, "Oh, this is really great." He said, "Do you have a business plan?" And I said, I've never heard of a business plan before. What's a business plan?" And he explained it. And I said, "Have you written those?" He said, "Yeah, I've written a bunch of those." And I said, "You want to be partners?" And so basically, it's funny how the world works. Sometimes you just do what you love, and you attract these people that, people come into your life out of nowhere. But I'm still partners with this guy, Kovic, and he's still written every business plan for every one of our restaurants. And so as I was kind of getting more experience, I went, and the biggest challenges for me in opening a place starting out, and I think this is pretty common, was one, raising money, because it's hard to get people to believe in you when you don't have a track record. And I was able to raise a little bit of money, probably 20% of what I needed from family and close friends and so forth. But a lot of it was just going out and asking over and over again and trying to cook for people, and just trying to get people to believe in me. And what was probably equally hard, if not harder, was getting a building owner or a landlord to be willing to lease a restaurant space to somebody they'd never heard of before, who had no track record. And we went through a bunch of places all over the city that just wouldn't take us seriously. And then there was a local landlord, which is where Rustic Canyon is right now. And there was a Chinese restaurant that was going out of business, and he really wanted to put El Pollo Loco there. El Pollo Loco was the front runner. And we just kept begging him, "Please, just give us a chance. I promise we'll come through, please." And he said, "Oh, no, I'm kind of committed to El Pollo Loco. They're safe bet." And much to the city's, I've had a lot of challenges with the city, but one of the biggest benefits was they were really didn't want to put any more fast food in the city at the time. And so El Pollo Loco got turned down. And then this guy, Mark, came back to us and said, "The space is yours if you want it." And I remember that was one of the greatest days of my life. It was just, I finally knew it was going to be real. And so that started the process of getting, Rustic Canyon open. Eventually we were able to raise most of the money and kind of went a little leaner than expected, but we got it open, and Rustic Canyon was pretty much a success from day one. I mean, when I say success, it was busy and we were cash flow positive from the first day. It was not smooth. I mean, it was, I was a big learning curve for me, not having as much experience as some people have going into this. And I made a lot of mistakes, but, when people come to me, sometimes people will come to me now and say, what's your advice on starting a business? And I say, look, there's three things that I look at. One is, do you have an idea that is like that there's a need for? Do you have an idea that it can just be like, hey, this neighborhood needs this kind of food, or we need a place that's at this price point, or we need a place that is someone can bring your whole family to, whatever it is. Like, do you have a need? And the second one is, do you have a budget? Do you have a plan? And not that the only thing I know about budgets is they're always wrong, but if they're a roadmap. So if you don't have anything to start off with, you easily can not even know where you are, whether you're doing well or not doing well, and then you can end up upside down really quickly. So it's really important to have a roadmap that you can show people and say, this is my plan, and if I deviate from the plan, I will make a change. But at least I have a plan. I have something to benchmark against. And then the last thing, which is the most important thing to me, is, do you have the right people you're with, whether that's your partners or yourself as a primary operator. It's really, really important, because there's always going to be really challenging situations. And if you have somebody or a team that is willing to adjust and be humble and try to figure out new ways to navigate around things and not give up, you're probably going to be able to adjust the first one and fix your idea. You're going to be able to fix your budget for sure. But if you don't, that's where it falls apart. It's still a very human business. And so, for me, it was like, that was the big thing. Once we got the money in the space, was just putting the team together and starting to make Rustic work. And in the beginning, it was just me and our chef. But we were humble and we were hungry and we just wanted to figure it out. And so when we made mistakes, we just tried not to make the same mistake again. And over time, it got better. So about 8 months into opening Rustic, I met my wife, Zoe, and that kind of changed my whole trajectory of my life and our restaurant group. We got introduced by my mom, actually, who had met her mom in a book club. And my mom was smart enough to tell me that to introduce us as a potential working relationship, because she knew if she was trying to set me up, I wasn't going to go for it. But Zoe came and did a tasting for us. We were looking for a pastry chef, and she was unbelievable. She just got it. She just had so much. There was such an honest approach. Yep, that's her book, Huckleberry. But it was just such an honest approach to baking. It wasn't fancy. It was just homey and comforting. And she's always said her favorite thing is just, the reason she likes to bake in the morning is she loves the idea of someone walking in and just her handing them this just hot, delicious pastry right out of the oven. And that spirit is in, the food that she makes. And so meeting Zoe, I always kind of knew I wanted to have multiple places. I'd come from working in a group that had multiple places, and I'd seen how things, I liked the creativity of coming up with different things instead of having multiples of the same, which is also another challenge that I think it just wasn't my path, but I think it's an interesting path when it's done well. But Zoe, as a baker, took her job at Rustic as a pastry chef, and she got pretty bored of doing 20 desserts, 30 desserts a night. She'd come from bakeries where they were doing hundreds of croissants every morning and big loaves of bread, and that's what she wanted to do. And so we did a kind of test run at Rustic Canyon, and it went really well. And then we opened Huckleberry, and Huckleberry was a big success from the beginning. And once again, we made tons of mistakes. We had never done a fast casual type place before, which is a very different model. And but people liked it, and the challenges became different. So in the first restaurant, it was, how do I raise money? How do I get a landlord to give me a space? Once we had a track record, it was really easy to raise money, and it was really easy to get landlords to give us spaces. What became hard was, how do we maintain quality? How do we do two different things and stretch ourselves and make them both just as good? And so we did Huckleberry together, and that was really Zoe's kind of baby from the beginning. But at Huckleberry, I ended up, we were looking for a general manager. We didn't have a lot of money to spend. And this really awesome, super young 24-year-old named Joel came in the door, and he had just moved from Seattle where he had managed a bunch of Starbucks. And he was just sort of a young, hungry kid. And he became our general manager, and between Zoe's inspiration and his love of HR and putting together manuals and structure and being a leader, it really worked. And actually Joel has kind of gone up to the ranks, and now, 13 years later, runs our whole company. He's our COO. So it's been a really fun ride to watch and to be there with Joel. So we did Huckleberry, and then we kind of, and then as I started to think about growth for me, because Zoe was much more of like she would have been happy with just Huckleberry, and she would have put all her creative energy into constantly evolving that. And for me, I like the idea of building this group. And so growth for me, but I never wanted to do things. And to this day, we still never made decisions just for money. Like, obviously we want to make money. Obviously we want to try to have our restaurants be successful for many reasons, but I never chased things. I was like, oh, that's a good financial opportunity. I always tried to do things that I believed in, that were either driven by, hey, I really would love to create this kind of food. Like there's a need, like we said, for this food, or there's someone within our group who's very inspirational and needs to shine somewhere, and we need to create a place for that. Or, sometimes it's as simple as just being inspired by spaces and being like, this is an amazing building. I could see us doing something really beautiful in here. And so I'll take you really quickly through the rest of our places. So next was Sweet Rose, which is our ice cream shop. And that came from the fact that there was nowhere. Now there's a bunch of artisan ice cream places, but when we opened Sweet Rose over 10 years ago, there really wasn't anywhere that used organic dairy, that was old-fashioned, ice cream, but like making everything from scratch. And it was challenging because there were all these rules that made it hard, where you couldn't produce from scratch. You needed to go, buy someone else's pre-made base. And for any of you that are chefs, like it's like buying someone else's chicken stock. Like you would never do that, because that's where all the flavor comes from. You need to build your base and you need to do it yourself. But because of the milk and dairy, we had to build this crazy room, and it's a lot of hoops to jump through. But we opened Sweet Rose, and then Zoe got pregnant with our first child, and we had taken a little time off, and we're like, oh, let's just get bored and connect. And then we're like, oh, let's do this bakery. And so we decided we wanted to do like an actual bread bakery. And then we realized that we felt that there wasn't any really good place for an artisan style pizza in Santa Monica. We were driving across town and going to Moats all the time for pizza. And so we decided that it worked together to have bread and pizza. And so then we opened Milo and Olive. And then we told ourselves we're going to take a break again. And then a friend called and said, you got to look at this building. It's this old telephone building in Santa Monica. And that was the building where it had two big, beautiful spaces. I'd never seen a building like that in Santa Monica. So many of the new buildings are just this one kind of cookie cutter style. And we wanted to do something there. So we took both those spaces, and on one of them, we partnered with our friends, Brian and Kim, who had a restaurant downtown that got moved because of when the metro came. They did an eminent domain situation on their space. And so they were looking for something. And then we wanted something next to it that would complement it, but not overly compete with it. And we had this wonderful woman named Catherine, who had started as a server at Rustic Canyon and had fallen in love with wine. And she really wanted to have her own wine shop. And so we said, let's do a wine shop and wine bar, and then have a restaurant next door, and people can go back and forth. And so that was that. And then we said we weren't going to do anything again for a while. And then when I was living, at one point, we've moved since then, but at one point we moved back into the house that I grew up in when my mom moved out, my dad passed away. And we kept driving by this restaurant that I went to as a kid, and it was kind of a Mexican place that had kind of been run down for a while. It used to be really, really popular, and we wanted to bring it back to life. And so that's what where Tallulah's was born, which is our restaurant down in Santa Monica Canyon. And then finally, Birdie G's, which is our last restaurant, was so one of the structures that I have in order to keep everybody, to make sure the restaurants are all special, since they're not multiple locations of the same thing, they're not the same menu, and also to preserve my own sanity and to make sure that, you know, I can be with my family and do our things too, is that we've gone back. Our restaurants since Casilla and Esther's, we started with partnerships with chefs. So they were all co-owned with other people. And then we went back and we found people over time to make partners at all of our other places. So all 9 of our businesses, we have co-owners now and share partners who are operating partners. And one of them is a chef by the name of Jeremy Fox, who was our 3rd chef at Rustic Canyon. He's been with us for 7 years, and he's just a really talented, wonderful person. And he really wanted to have a place that was his own, that he started from scratch. And I knew for him to be with us long term, he wasn't going to be satisfied unless he had that. And so goal was to find a place for him to support that. And we ended up opening Birdie G's, which is named after his daughter Birdie Gladys. And that was pretty much it. As we got towards the end of that, I kind of knew that was going to be our last restaurant. We're not planning on opening other restaurants. I do a lot of stuff on intuition and kind of feeling, okay, what feels right? And it just felt like we had grown to the right size. And actually since then, what we've done is Zoe and I have long had a dream of learning how to farm and starting a farm to be able to sell a little bit to our restaurants, but also just to support the community and also to work on bringing, to work on soil health and bringing some land that was not in great shape back to life and making the soil really healthy. And so we actually moved about 45 miles outside of LA up to Ojai, and we're living on a little farm with our family that we started. And that's kind of the path that that I took. I'm sure I missed stuff. I made some notes earlier, but really I'm open for any questions. I'm a big fan of entrepreneurship. I'm a big fan of people following their dreams and putting a good plan in place. And I'm happy to answer any questions and share any more of my experiences if they're helpful to anybody.
Awesome. Josh, thank you so much. I just love your story. It's so different than mine. I began to be taken over by the business component and lost sight of my original vision because of the business component kind of took over the vision. So I love your commitment to partnerships and to your initial vision of business. And so when you began your business, you always saw it from like the ideation to the full development of it as multiple units.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I knew how many I was going to have in the beginning, but I knew I wanted more than one. You know, it's also challenging. I mean, it's financially it's challenging unless you're a huge restaurant to not only build enough of sort of a financial base for yourself, but also to be able to empower people around you and to give them opportunities for careers instead of jobs with just one place. And so it kind of naturally felt like that was the only way to do it, was to grow to a size where people had enough opportunities that they could kind of, you know, hang their hat here and be like, all right, this is where I'm going to stay, as opposed to this is going to be a stepping stone from here to somewhere else.
That's right. And so tell me about picking the right people. I met a guy who was a mentor of mine, and he said that was his forte and that was his key to success. So in regards to, I mean, because you've done that at the beginning, I've interviewed many, and I know a lot of people in the industry, and very few people say, I know how to pick the right people. I know how to surround myself with talented people. So that's a skill, and that's also honor and respect at the same time that fuels the whole dynamic of it. But what do you think is your real key to being able to formulate a team and to choose those talented people?
Well, we were talking about this, I know, a little bit before we got started. It's gotten easier in the sense that once you pick enough good people, they start picking good people, and it becomes like a positive snowball effect. I will say I try to be as sort of generally just, self-aware and present as possible when I'm interviewing somebody. And I don't really spend much time. I don't even really look at people's resumes, to be honest. It's probably not a great thing, but I'll look at them after the fact. But when I meet somebody, when I interview, and I don't do most of the interviewing anymore. Most of the interviewing happens now by our managers. But when I did, I really wanted to connect and sit with them and make sure that I liked the person, that I felt like, A, they were a good person to start off with. They were honest. They were communicative. What I've found when I've interviewed people for positions and for important positions, more than half of them don't work out. Even with that, even with trying to trust your gut. I mean, a lot of people can interview well and then stuff gets in the way. But I don't think I've ever had anybody that I didn't trust in the interview. I've definitely had a few times where I've been like, oh, well, the resume is really good, I'll hire them, but it didn't get a good feeling about it. And then it did. All those cases, it didn't work out. You know what I mean? So I've had a bunch of people who I liked and trusted and got a good feeling from who worked out. And I've had a bunch of people I've liked and trusted, had a good feeling about who didn't work out, but I've never had anybody I didn't like or trust who worked out. So it's like, I think that's like a really important thing, that, you want to surround yourself with people that you want to go to work with, and that you believe in and that you trust, and that you can't also get kind of bitter and frustrated if you get burned by that, because you will get burned by that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you can't go, well, now I'm not going to trust my gut anymore because that person didn't work out, because you know what? Then you're going to miss the other people that are going to work out. And the people who are going to work out are going to have much more of an impact on your life than the people who are not going to work out. And so I think it's, that's something that's really important, is to trust yourself and to be honest, and, be open and open-minded, and really talk to people and get to know them. It's a people business.
Amen. So tell me about Joel. That parlay of that individual from who he was to who he is now was inspired by how he showed up initially?
No, I think that, once again, that's something that is not, it's not
foreseeable.
Yeah, Zoe and I share that same sort of idea of liking and trusting the person. I think a lot of people would have brought Joel in for an interview and thought he was too young, or he was like, really, he was dressed very stylish, very fancy, and I was like, we're just going to be in a cafe over here, but it's like, he was who he was, and he was really smart, and we just liked him from the beginning. And we've had a lot of people like that. We have over 40 managers in our group now from all different levels, and more than half of them have moved up from either hourly positions to management positions, or from junior management positions to senior management positions. I really believe in, when you find good people, they can, and you kind of give them opportunities and you trust them, a lot of them will move up. You know what I mean? A lot of them will take that opportunity and they'll really shine. Hold on one second. Let me just.
Okay. And so I want to invite everyone here to, if you have any questions, put them in the chat so that Josh can answer them, and I will give you that opportunity. I see a couple questions, Mulugeta and Flo, that I will ask Josh as we move forward. So this is a great cookbook. This is from Huckleberries. If you want to make their cornbread coffee cake, get this cookbook. It's a good one. Has some good stuff in here.
My 10-year-old had to interrupt me to bring me one of his grilled leeks.
Pardon me?
He had to interrupt me to bring me a grilled leek that he made.
Oh, that's important.
That's his, I'm telling you, he's obsessed. It's really fun to
It's a
watch.
regular size Traeger?
Yeah, it's just a regular sized Traeger. He loves it.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm not super good at Zoom, so I'm gonna try my best. So do I just go from the top and answer questions?
I can just ask you the questions.
Okay, that would be really helpful.
How did you find where to buy or purchase your basic ingredients?
That's a good question. So one of the big important things that we started off with was supporting local farms. That was always an important thing for me. So we tried to buy as many things from the beginning and continue to from the farmers market. And luckily we have an amazing farmers market. So we would talk to them and try to let our menus be inspired by that. And then along the way, you just kind of find, once you have a restaurant open, you know, a food business, as you know, people are coming to sell you stuff all the time, you know? And so it's the same thing almost as you do with judging people that are coming to work with you, you know, that you're interviewing for a job, is like, is this person sincere? You know, are they going to deliver on what they say? I mean, there's plenty of opportunities to buy stuff, but I'm a big believer in building relationships. And so relationship with the farmers, you know, and to me, that was like, you know, you can sit down and you can talk to a farmer and you'd be like, okay, well, you know, our goal is to buy stuff that's organic. Well, this farmer's not organic, but why aren't they organic? And you sit down and you talk to them, and they're like, well, we're a small farm. We just can't afford the certification process. And, you know, once a year we have to spray this one little thing over here because of this situation, but it doesn't touch anything else. And you go, okay, you know, I can sit with that and I can live with that. As opposed to just like something stamped that comes from, you know, thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
The organic stamp on it. And so I think that's what we try to do, is we try to keep it, that to me is what local is. We try to, you know, work with people that are close by, that ideally you can go visit what they do. And then you just build your network of other vendors, you know, and you find your place where you get your equipment, and you find your place where you get your plates, and you know, it's just trial and error.
Awesome. And Mulugeta wants to know, do you have an artistic quality to make a perfect plate? So when you became a chef, do you have an artistic quality about yourself?
Well, first of all, I will say I am not a chef. So I've never been a chef for any of our places. I did cook for those dinners before we opened, and I was not a very artistic plater. So that was a much better question for our chefs in our restaurants. But I will say what I like in a plate. I think that chefs often toe the line between art and craft and function, you know, and it's for everyone who's a chef here, I mean, it's a balancing act, because, you know, there's the extreme of, you know, the little piece of food on the big plate.
Tweezers.
You know, and then there's the, you know, the kind of big tray of family meal that comes out, and like everything in between. And so I personally like, I like the beauty of function. I like things, I don't like things on a plate that can't be eaten. I don't like things that confuse me. I think there's still a way to be artistic with presentation and thoughtful, with colors and textures and layers, without making it something that doesn't feel like food. But that's just me. Some people love like super, I mean, we have chefs in our group who come from that background. They can wow you with that. But in our restaurants, we try not to do that. We try to
No foam?
Very, 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 very little foam.
So Josh, you've told us about basically how you're inspired, but your place that's downtown at the telephone company, I don't know the name of it. What's the name of that one restaurant?
Well, there's two. It's Casilla is the restaurant, and then Esther's is the wine shop and wine bar.
That is a lovely space. Both spaces so near each other. You can roll from one to the other, and it's a great evening. What was the idea there beyond the wine bar? Because the food that's in there is amazing and so very different.
So Casilla was interesting. Casilla was the first time that we opened and partnered with somebody outside of our group. So all of our restaurants, like, you know, we brought people in to existing restaurants, or we started Birdie G's with Jeremy, but we already had a relationship with him. Casilla, so all the restaurants we had opened prior to Casilla were all about 2,000 square feet or less. Mm-hmm. And it was very intimate. It was very easy to make it feel cozy and intimate. And then when we saw the space for Casilla, I was blown away by how beautiful it was, but it was big. I mean, it's over 5,000 square feet,
Yeah.
all ceilings. And we started to think, okay, how do we make a 5,000 square foot space feel intimate? And I started to think about, okay, what are the places that are that big that I like, where I feel cozy? There's a restaurant in New York, it's been there forever, a French bistro called Balthazar, that is, it's not the best food in the world. It's really good, but it's my favorite restaurant because it is just a celebration, and like go there and eat oysters and steak and French fries and have a glass of champagne and then have chocolate pudding. It's just like, it's what you want to eat, and it is busy all the time. And because of the way it's laid out with this sort of bistro look, you know, there's so much to look at that you don't feel like you're in a big restaurant. There's the bar, and there's the raw bar, and so we wanted that. But the more we thought about it, we didn't really want to do French food. It just felt a little bit too heavy and just didn't feel like it was exactly what we wanted. And once again, just sort of like on trusting your gut, Zoe and I had been downtown at an event, and we asked somebody, hey, where should we go eat? Someone said, oh, go try Spice Table, which is what Brian and Kim's restaurant was, that got closed down because of the metro. And so we went in there, and it was one of the first times, you know, our restaurants, we try to create a palpable environment where you walk in and you feel like, oh, this feels fun. Like I feel like I'm walking into someone's home. I feel like I'm being taken care of. And I felt that the second I walked into Spice Table. And Brian and Kim weren't even there that night. They were off. And that's how you can tell when a place is good, when the person's not even there, the chef's not even there cooking, and it still feels that way. And so we went there, we had this great meal, and I got Brian's number, and I called him after, and I just said, hey, I just want to let you know what a great job your staff did and how wonderful it was, how delicious. And that was that. I didn't think anything more of it. And then we opened Milo and Olive, and one day I was walking in, and Brian and Kim were sitting at the bar, and I went and talked to them for a while. They told me about what was happening with their restaurant. And that was kind of it. And then one night we were trying to figure out, okay, who do we do this? We actually had flown a couple of chefs in through a recruiter. We were trying to figure out who the right person was and exactly what it was going to be. I was like, and even though it was not, I mean, Brian and Kim's place is Southeast Asian. It's a mixture of Vietnamese and Chinese. And I was like, maybe I'll just call Brian and see if he would want to do something there. And I called him, and they were like, yeah, I think we have to close. Let me come take a look at it. And they saw the space, and they fell in love with it. And then they were like, there's a lot of roots in Vietnam. It's sort of there was a lot of French influence there. And so there's a lot of bistros, and there's a lot of that style of cooking that's there, and baguettes and French bakeries are very prominent. And they said, what if we did sort of a Vietnamese style bistro? So it's like we had the raw bar, we had the steak and fries off the grill, but instead of, your traditional steak, it was done with, anchovy salt and fish sauce. And, the French fries had this, and, there was a lot of more of the sort of Vietnamese and Chinese flavors in the mignonette that goes with the oysters, and the hot sauce that goes with the oysters. And
delicious, by the way, delicious.
Thank you. So that's where it came about, was to do basically like a modern day Vietnamese Chinese brasserie.
Wait, my boyfriend and I were in there enjoying the food, and I was like, I'm not sure what this is called, this combination of things, but it's really entertaining and delicious, and absolutely works. Are there any additional questions from the audience? Is there anything that you'd like to know about the industry, about Josh, about the journey? Because I could obviously continue to probe. Any more questions?
I see one question about what made me want to make the chefs co-owners from Florence.
Yes.
That really came down to quality. I think that you don't have a restaurant. I think the best restaurants in the world is where it feels like the person who owns it is back there cooking, whether or not they're cooking or not that given night. And so, to me, the restaurants that I don't love, that I'm not big fan of are the ones that feel like there's like a corporate entity running it, and it's like, and so I always, well, but for that matter, I appreciate the ability to expand and do that. So I always wanted our places to run on the back end, a strong corporate entity, in the sense that, even though we're small, like we have good structures and we have good benefits and we have good, we just we have the ability to grow in a thoughtful way. But I wanted each place to feel very individuated, and in some ways it's a lot harder. I mean, you know what I mean? Like sometimes we go through major questions. I mean, even going through this pandemic, it's like, it's not one size fits all, Some places are ready for takeout and they're jamming away from the beginning. Birdie G's had never done a single takeout dish in its first year of existence before last March. They had to pivot right away. So it's, there are different challenges, but with chef partners, we can go in and we can say, hey, what's your vision? Let me find a way to support that. Joel, who we talked about, a lot of his leadership styles, this idea of servant leadership, this idea of like, how can our executive team, instead of just coming down and telling you like that sort of bad corporate thing of like, this is the way it's going to be done. We're like, how can we help you? You know what I mean? We've done a lot of research, like we did with COVID. Like he wrote an amazing COVID playbook about how to handle each situation and do this and that. That gave a lot of structure and a lot of stability to each of the restaurants. But then it was up to each restaurant to figure out what they were going to offer that was going to make them sustain their businesses, So that's the best of both worlds. But we couldn't have done that without chef partners. It just would have felt too much like we were, kind of watering everything down.
Yeah. So I have a question from Charles. How are you handling COVID? And thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
And also he wants to know, what job site do you use?
Okay, so first, I'll answer the quick ones. For job sites, we've used everything. From Craigslist to word of mouth. We do an incentive thing where if someone refers an employee and they stay for more than 3 months, they get a finder's fee for finding them. And so we've done all different kinds of things. We have people email our website directly if they want to come work with us. We've used recruiters for management positions. We've used ZipRecruiter in the past. We've used everything. And really every restaurant uses different things. There's some specific ones to restaurant business. There's a thing called WorkPop that we used for a while. I don't know if we continue to do it. I don't do, as I said, I don't really do a lot of the hiring anymore. So I'm not as directly in it, but we've used a lot of things, and just because finding good people is always a challenge. As far as how do we respond to COVID, the best that we could, still doing it the best we can. It was very different. When March 15th happened last year and we realized we were going to have to shut down, it was kind of like, and no one really knew at the time what shutdown meant. Were they going to shut us down altogether? Or were they going to allow us to continue to go? When was dining going to come back? There was really a triage situation at that point. It was like, okay, how do we do the best to look after our employees, but still to have a business for them to come back to? The PPP loans, the first set of PPP loans helped a lot. But we made really our goal, especially once we got to a place where we could open up our patios again, was like, let's try to use this money as slowly as possible because we don't know how long this thing's going to take. So we try to have any illusions of like, this is all going to be done. And, they say use this in 24 weeks. It's in 24 weeks, we're going to be fine because, as we've seen, we're not there yet. And actually, most of our places, we were able to get back to a minimal loss, break-even situation during outdoor dining, which was really good. All the outdoor tables and that was really helpful. Once we've had to pivot back to takeout only, it's been really pretty challenging. I mean, we've had major losses almost across the board in December, and will also in January. And hopefully we'll get a second round of PPP loans, and that'll help stabilize us until we get through this next phase. But it's survival, and luckily none of our restaurants are, in danger of closing in the next 30 days. And I think with the additional money, they should all be stable enough to get through all this. But it is a big challenge, and I think we're all looking forward to getting back to people being able to have people dine in, even at least on the patios, because one, it's very gratifying. It's what we love to do. And two, it's very stabilizing from a financial standpoint.
Someone asked that when we get back to normal, I question what that even is. How do people approach with job opportunities? Seeking employment.
Anybody can email me. My email is really simple. It's just my first and last name, Josh Loeb at Yahoo. I will probably ask you a couple of questions like, what do you want to do and what's your experience? And then I would, forward you on to a manager who could interview you and take a look. We're always looking for good people. So, to me, that's, I like when people reach out. Yeah, we're not really hiring right now. We're trying to bring our staff back, and we were able to get most of our staff back when we did outdoor dining, which was really nice. We had to put a lot of people on leave again during this last shutdown of outdoor dining, and hopefully, we'll get them all back sooner than later.
Awesome. Hi, Eric. Josh, Eric has a question. He says he's a big fan of your restaurants, amazing food. What advice do you have for someone looking to start in the industry and open their own business?
I would say a few things. One, try to be able to get as clear as possible on what your vision is, so you can really communicate it in a clear way. And it doesn't have to be, groundbreakingly new or any of those things. Just like, I want to open this pizza place because I love pizza, and I think I can do it really well because of this, this, and this. And I think this area that I want to open needs it, So to be really clear on that, to write a plan, once again, doesn't have to be super fancy, doesn't have to be 40 pages with pictures and all this stuff. It just has to be like, show that you kind of have an understanding of what these are my costs, and this is how much I need to sell, and I think I can sell it in this neighborhood or this area. And then, if you are, kind of depends on where you're at. Like if you're a chef and you trust yourself to be able to be the person to produce that, then just start cooking and making opportunities wherever you can to, for people to try your food. If you are, someone who wants to open a restaurant, but you're not a chef, start to have those conversations, start to meet people who might be good at that, who you could team up with in one way or another, and always learn. I am a big fan of learning. I read everything I can. I listen to everything I can. I talk to people about it. I just think that, and not just about that industry, but, like anything, how to manage people, how to get the most out of people, how to, create the right kind of environments, whatever it is. So I don't know if that was helpful, but that's.
Yeah, I think that was awesome. How have you kept your staff motivated through COVID closures? Every time my team comes back from COVID quarantine, it takes a while to get everyone back on a roll. That's from Rockwell Kitchens.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think the people that we've managed to keep on all the way through are very grateful for the most part of just to be working. I think there's a good motivation there. Bringing people back that maybe are not so comfortable coming back, I think that was one of the biggest challenges. We didn't really want people to have to come back if they weren't comfortable, and there was a lot of opportunities for people to not do that, but there were some people that were kind of on the fence. And I think for that, we just really tried to show that we were creating really safe environments. And I do believe that restaurants, when they use proper PPE and when they have sound policies, can be really safe environments. We have, like everyone else, we've had people contact COVID, and you know, we have not had them spread it. You know, we haven't been able to catch it beforehand, like with screening and with questionnaires and with proper policy. And so, you know, it's like a well-run, you know, healthcare environment where, like, if it's done right, you can keep everybody safe while you're doing it. And I think that's what people really wanted, was to know that they were coming into a safe environment. And so because of Joel, really, and because of our team and his leadership, like, we have been able to create really safe environments and give people that sense of trust. As far as overall motivation, I mean, it's hard. Like, it's hard to, you know, you talk about like a service staff, for instance, working in a restaurant, who kind of gets that thrill of having people come in and talking to tables and doing, you know, 100 or 200 people a night, and you have that kind of buzz, and then you're doing 20 takeout orders. You know, it's like nobody's coming in, you're wearing a mask and a face shield, you know, putting everything in boxes. It's, you know, for chefs, that's hard. For servers, that's hard. You know, I don't think there's an easy formula other than to say, we're doing this to preserve the business. You know, we're doing this because, and to try to say, you know, what are the little touches we can do to translate that across? You know, can we put a little card that has our personality in it that explains why we're doing this menu and how to properly reheat it, you know, so that it's has a personal touch on it? You know, how do we do those things? How do we put all that love into the food and into the experience so that people feel it, and so that we can trust that they feel it, even though we don't get to see them enjoy it? So, you know, I think it's really hard. It's hard to get everyone back and to get everyone motivated all the time. But, you know, these are the times that hopefully make us stronger. So we'll see.
Yes, we have a person here, A Seals. A Seals, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Maybe. I think, there you go.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Josh,
I
thank
can't wait to
you.
hear about La Dome. That's been gone for a while, but yummy.
Yes, Josh, this is such an awesome opportunity. And Kathleen, thank you for hosting. I truly appreciate this.
Oh, you're
This
welcome.
opportunity is immensely, oh my God, it's just so awesome to hear somebody who's not only already in the business, but you have not just a few years experience, but you have a few years and plus wife in the experience of hospitality. And you also have multiple locations. So my background is not necessarily restaurant related. I have 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. I love cooking. I was an athlete. So food was everything to me as a competitive bodybuilder, along with Arnold Schwarzenegger for 10 years. And even when I went into boxing, food was everything. So most of the time, during that time, I ate at La Dome restaurant. And I learned so much as far as medium rare and what is this? This green stuff is called spinach. And I learned how to shear salmon. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome, you know, because being a competitive athlete, you have so many limitations of what you can eat. And especially when you step out of your own home, you have to, you know, calorie count, and does it have fats, and are these good fats or bad fats, and all this and that. But the main question to you is, in the process of looking for space, my son is named Legend, and Legend went through St. Joseph Culinary Program, and he knew right off, he said he wanted to work at Umami Burger. And they've been through multiple chefs. They have, I think it's like 8 guys. I emailed everybody earlier this morning to let them know that you were going to be on. And there's so many line workers out there that have talent, Josh, and they're not given the opportunity to accelerate up the chain. How are you able to maintain, and those workers are being loyal to you? How are you able to maintain them in the different restaurants that you have? Are you shifting them in and out of different restaurants so they can get exposure of the different, you know, surrounding communities where your restaurants are located, or what do you do?
Yeah, it's a really good question. You know, So it's so funny. I had one of our staff members who's been with us actually for 14 years call me but 30 minutes before this and tell me that he was moving and he was giving his notice. He was a manager at one of our places. And it was a really warm conversation. We talked about like how he got there, and he had moved up a lot within our business, and he's like, I just I don't want you to be upset. I said, of course I'm not upset. I totally understand. I said one of the things that we said really early on is people are going to leave, but I don't want anyone to leave because they're frustrated. I want people to leave either because there's a better opportunity out there that we can't provide for them, or they're moving, or they're changing their careers, or they're no longer inspired by this and they want to do something else. And so in order to do that, I think we need to create a couple of things. One, there needs to be communication. And I think that restaurant people are not always the best communicators. Kitchen people are not always the best communicators. It's like people work, they're chefs. My wife jokes about it. She's like, I like to cook. I like to be back there because I don't want to be up front talking to people. I've got to make them self-conscious, So it's like, we have a lot of chefs, really talented chefs, very accomplished, who don't like having conversations, or especially hard conversations. And so, but I think it's really essential to management and to happiness in general, whether it's in relationships and in whatever. It's like what we teach our kids, like, go, you're having an issue with something, go talk to them, ask, talk to your teacher, talk to your friends. Let's try to like get it out in the open. And so we try to really push conversation. We try to get people to ask, check in if someone seems like they're in a bad mood. What's going on with you? If they've been in a bad mood for a while, what's wrong? Are you not happy? What's what else can we do? We have a culture that's built on upward mobility. I mean, we built on like, hey, we want our cooks to become sous chefs. We want our sous chefs to become head chefs. We want our head chefs to become, we want them to everyone to be able to continue to grow. And so, I will say a couple things. One, and I don't know anything about the culture of Umami Burger, but I do think that that's the difference a lot of times between like a corporate chain. Some corporate chains really do have that upper mobility structure, but a lot of them, they just don't have the focus and the energy on, hey, we have some really talented people here. Let's create an opportunity for them to grow. So I think getting involved with groups and organizations that have that is really important. So you actually have an opportunity for that. We just try to, we try to see people, we try to hear people, we try to have them communicate what are their needs, what are their desires, where do they want to be, and we try to meet those needs as much as possible. And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't. But if we're not asking and we're not aware of who is working with us and what they want, it's really hard to figure out to be able to meet those needs. So we just try to communicate and talk with them.
Wow. That's so important, because if you don't know what they want, there's no way to get it or to keep that relationship strong. Are there any more questions for Josh? Any more questions? Any more questions? So Josh, I understand how you get your inspiration from different space and what goes in there and that, but where do you like to eat around locally?
Well, as I said, we moved, so and also we're
Oh, and I want to welcome you to Ventura County. I'm out here in Camarillo. So are you going to open your farm up to the public and have us come in and have?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, with the time right, I would love that. We're growing a lot of stuff right now. Where do I like to eat? I like to eat at places that, to be honest, with 3 young kids, we didn't get out that much. So when we got out, we would generally go to one of our own restaurants. But I mean, I like to eat, if I hear about a place that is, owner operated and using good ingredients, that's pretty much the baseline for what I like. I will check out any place that does that, that is cooking with heart and soul and that is mindful of what they're using, because I think it's really important to try to use things that are thoughtfully sourced, especially now and with all the challenges we have in our world. So, yeah, I mean, I'll eat anything. I love eating that.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
There's one more question I wanted to throw in here from Mulugeta, who said, how do you choose your wine bottles and what is the reason behind the names, The Right Decision, El Negroni, and the Dad Bod, and Penicillin?
Okay, so we're talking wines and cocktails over here.
Right.
The wine bottles are, I was actually, one of the jobs I had was the wine buyer. And so I started our wine program at Rustic Canyon and then found people to pass it on to, and actually pretty much every aspect, whether it's like management or wine, I found people that are way better at their job than I was, and they have made our restaurants way better than I could have ever made them. And I don't say that casually. I mean, you know, I think it's all about putting really great, smart people around you and letting, the more they rise everything up, the more you get to kind of be a part of that. And so, so we've got some really good wine directors. Catherine is probably our senior wine director for our group. She's our partner at Esther's. She started off as a server at Rustic Canyon and then took over the wine program and really built Rustic Canyon's wine program to a place where it was really had a lot of accolades, and then has done that for Esther's and oversees all the wine buyers of all in our group. And for wine, our philosophy is like, wine's like food. Like, it can be really pretentious. It also can be really enjoyable. And we want to train our staff so they're knowledgeable, so that if they get to a table and the table wants to really talk details, they can go there with them. But I also don't want them to come and intimidate someone, because 80% of people, they don't want to talk about all the nuanced things, and they just want to enjoy a good glass of wine. You know what I mean? And they know, hey, I like to drink red mostly. I like to drink white. I like a lighter wine. I like a heavier wine. I like something that has a lot of fruit. Like, those are basic things that I think most of us feel comfortable talking about. And so we try to really engage people to find them the right wine when it comes to that. The drinks come from our we have cocktail creators who are kind of at each of our places, and so they run with it. I don't think I've had the Dad Bod, but next time I'm down, I'll go order one of those. They come, you know, people.
Right.
Drinks, they like to come up with interesting names. So
That's cool. That's cool.
Any other questions for this momentary opening into the industry through the eyes of Josh? Anybody have anything? Well, Josh, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh.
it's my pleasure.
And tell us, are all the restaurants open right now? Everybody's doing takeout. How can we support your restaurant, support the family?
You know, I think I would just say support the industry. I mean, just go to your favorite restaurants, spend money there, you know, when you can, buy gift certificates from your favorite restaurants. That's a huge source for a lot of places, because it's money in the bank now that doesn't necessarily cost the restaurant anything. And then down the road, when things go back to normal, then you have all this, you know, ability to, you know, all this credit that you can go and enjoy. You know, I believe that our industry will come back. I think a lot of people are missing being able to go to a restaurant and sit down and eat a plate of food. And, you know, they can talk all about how, you know, ghost kitchens and delivery things are going to take over, but everyone I know just can't wait to go back and sit in a restaurant and have someone tell you what the chef's cooking that day and offer to bring you a drink, you know, and just take care of you. And so I believe in our business, and, you know, I think the more you can just support them, and you'd be amazed, just like the people walking in and, you know, getting takeout food and then calling up 20 minutes later and just letting someone know, hey, that was really delicious. Thank you so much. You know, we all of our managers send out manager notes every night, and that's like highlighted in there. Like when someone calls, it thrills them, you know. So it's don't underestimate small acts of kindness. I think they go a long way in this time, and you know, just keep going out and eating, supporting your favorite places. You know, I mean, hopefully we'll more of us than not will end up making it through, and then we'll be wiser for it on the other side.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I just want to say that Rustic Canyon has a menu called Grin and Bear It. It looks so amazingly delicious. I say try everything. I have some items coming my way, and also huckleberries in the morning, nothing like it. Get it for breakfast, get it for lunch, get your desserts for dinner. Delicious.
You're sweet. Thank you.
Everyone for coming. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much. If anyone has questions, feel free to email me, and I wish you guys all luck in whatever you do, food-wise or otherwise.
Thank you. Tell Zoe we all said hi.
I will. Take care.
Thank you, Josh.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.